I never thought the worst moment of my life would come wrapped in candy apple red and the sound of my own daughter laughing at my pain. My name is Margaret Ashford. I'm 52, widowed for 6 years, and I work as a freelance accountant in Portland, Oregon. I live in the house my husband Doug and I bought together, the one where we raised our daughter Cassidy, the one where I watched him die of cancer and then had to learn how to exist alone. Cassidy is 26, beautiful, talented, restless. For 3 years after dropping out of college, she drifted through jobs and half-formed dreams, and I watched her struggle, waiting for the moment when something would finally click. That moment came on a gray October afternoon when she sat at my kitchen table with a business plan and tears in her eyes. She wanted to start her own graphic design studio. She had the space picked out, clients lined up, a detailed roadmap to success. All she needed was $40,000. $40,000. Nearly everything I had left from Doug's life insurance. My entire safety net. The cushion that let me sleep at night. But she was my daughter. And she swore on her father's memory that this time was different. That she'd finally grown up. That she'd pay back every cent. I gave her the money on a Wednesday morning. 2 weeks later, she was gone. Moved out of her apartment without telling me. Stopped answering calls. Vanished like smoke. Then came the Saturday that changed everything. I was pulling weeds in my front garden when I heard the horn. Looked up to see a brand new BMW convertible, red as a scream, speeding down my street. And there she was behind the wheel, hair whipping in the wind, designer sunglasses covering half her face. Our eyes met for 2 seconds that felt like 2 hours. Then she leaned out and shouted loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear, "Thanks for the gift, old lady." She laughed, actually laughed, then hit the gas and disappeared around the corner, tires squealing, taking my $40,000 and my last shred of dignity with her. I stood there holding my gardening trowel while my neighbors watched from their windows, and I felt something inside me die. Not my heart, that had already broken when Doug died. This was something deeper. The part that believed love could change people. The part that thought being a good mother meant anything at all. For 2 months, I lived in that special kind of hell that comes from being spectacularly betrayed by someone you'd die for. I watched her Instagram posts from Seattle. Rooftop bars, expensive restaurants, designer boutiques, funded entirely by my lost future. I stopped sleeping, stopped answering calls from family, stopped believing in anything except the cold mathematics of my shrinking bank account. The silence from my daughter was absolute. Until it wasn't. Then came the night of November 18th. A brutal Pacific Northwest storm, rain hammering my roof at nearly 10 p.m., 3 soft knocks at my door that I almost didn't hear. I opened it to find Cassidy standing on my porch, soaking wet and shaking. She looked like she'd been hollowed out, 20 pounds lighter, hair matted, wearing a hoodie that hung off her frame like a shroud. In her arms, a canvas bag splitting open with bills, past due notices, disconnection warnings, a repossession notice for a BMW that was already gone. "Mom," she whispered, and her voice was the voice of someone who'd seen their life fall apart and couldn't find the pieces. "I need help." Every cell in my body screamed at me to slam the door, to let her stand there in the rain and feel what I'd felt, to be the cold, sensible woman who'd learned her lesson about giving second chances to people who set your trust on fire. But she was shaking, actually trembling. And when she looked up at me with those eyes, Doug's eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected. Fear. Real, genuine, bone-deep terror of who she'd become. So I did the stupidest, bravest, most painful thing I've ever done. I let her in. What followed wasn't a heartwarming redemption story where love conquers all and mistakes fade into happy endings. It was brutal. It was messy. It was the unglamorous, grinding work of watching someone try to become a person worth forgiving, while I tried to become a person capable of forgiving them. It was months of setting boundaries that felt like cruelty, of watching her work night shifts at Target while taking community college classes, of hearing her cry through the walls and not going to comfort her because comfort without consequences was what created this disaster, of slowly, painfully learning that forgiveness isn't a moment. It's 1,000 small decisions to keep building instead of demolishing. It was learning that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't mercy. It's the space to fail, face consequences, and discover whether they have the strength to become someone new. This is the story of what happened when I gave my daughter everything and she threw it away laughing. And then what happened when she came back broken, and I had to decide if love meant saving her again or teaching her to save herself. This is the story of the price of forgiveness, and whether some debts can ever truly be repaid. What would you do if the person you loved most in the world betrayed you in front of everyone you know, and then came back asking for help? I've always believed that the worst mistakes we make are the ones wrapped in good intentions. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early October when Cassidy came to me with her business proposal. I remember because Tuesdays are my long days. Back-to-back client calls, tax reconciliations that blur together into an endless parade of receipts and spreadsheets. I'd been working since 7 that morning, and by the time I heard her key in the front door around 3, my neck ached and my eyes felt like sandpaper. "Mom?" Her voice drifted from the entryway, tentative in a way that immediately put me on alert. Cassidy was many things, but tentative wasn't usually one of them. "In the study," I called back, saving the Excel file I'd been wrestling with for the past hour. Through the doorway, I watched her appear, auburn hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing that oversized Portland State hoodie she'd kept even after dropping out. She carried a worn leather portfolio under one arm, the kind design students use to present their work. She lingered in the doorway like she used to do as a teenager when she wanted to ask for something. "Do you have a minute?" I should have said no. I had 3 more hours of work ahead of me, a conference call with a client in Boston at 5, and a grocery list that had been growing all week. But she had that look in her eyes, the one that reminded me so much of Doug it physically hurt. Hopeful, scared, trying so hard to be brave. "Of course," I said, and gestured to the wingback chair across from my desk, the one Doug used to sit in while I worked, reading his mystery novels and occasionally asking if I wanted tea. Cassidy sat down carefully, like the chair might collapse beneath her. She placed the portfolio on her lap and took a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her chest. "I know you're busy," she started, "and I know I haven't given you a lot of reasons to believe in me lately." I didn't respond to that. We both knew it was true. In the 3 years since she'd left college, Cassidy had cycled through more jobs than I could count. Barista at Stumptown Coffee, graphic designer for a startup that folded after 8 months, marketing assistant for a real estate company where she lasted exactly 3 weeks before quitting because her boss was creatively stifling. Each time she'd had a reason. Each time I'd bitten my tongue and reminded myself that she was young, still figuring things out, that everyone's path looks different. But I was tired. God, I was so tired. "I've been working on something," she continued, opening the portfolio. Inside were printouts, mock-ups of logos, website designs, what looked like a business plan with actual charts and projections. A real business this time, not just freelancing, an actual design studio. She spread the papers across my desk with the kind of reverence people reserve for precious things. I recognized her work immediately. The clean lines, the bold color choices, the way she could take something ordinary and make it feel essential. Cassidy had always been talented. That was never the question. "I found an office space," she said, pulling out a lease agreement. "It's small, just 400 square feet in the Pearl District, but it's perfect. Exposed brick, huge windows right near Powell's. The landlord is willing to do a 6-month lease to start, and the rent is reasonable if I can make the deposit." I picked up the lease, scanned the terms. It looked legitimate. Professional, even. "I've already got 3 clients lined up," she went on, her words picking up speed the way they did when she got excited. "Small businesses that need rebranding. Nothing huge, but it's a start. And I've been teaching myself web development. Real coding, Mom, not just WordPress templates. I could offer full-service design and build packages." She pulled out more papers, testimonials from past freelance clients, a detailed breakdown of startup costs, projected revenue for the first year. It was more organized than anything I'd ever seen from her. More serious. "The thing is," she paused, and I saw her jaw tighten. This was the hard part. The ask. "I need capital. For the deposit, equipment, software licenses, marketing. I've applied for small business loans, but without collateral or a cosigner, no one will approve me. And I know. This is a huge thing to ask, but..." She looked up at me then, and I saw tears gathering in the corners of her eyes. "I need $40,000. The number hit me like cold water. 40,000. Nearly everything I had left from Doug's life insurance after paying off the mortgage and setting aside enough for emergencies. The cushion I'd been carefully protecting for 6 years. The nest egg that let me sleep at night knowing I could weather a slow month or an unexpected medical bill." "Cassidy," I started, but she held up a hand. "I know it's a lot. I know I haven't earned your trust. But this is real, Mom. This isn't like the other times. I've spent months planning this. I've done the research. I've built the foundation. All I need is the capital to make it happen. She pushed a printed spreadsheet toward me, a repayment plan, monthly installments over 3 years with interest. I'm not asking for a gift, she said firmly. I'm asking for an investment in me, in my future. And I swear to you, I swear on Dad's memory, I will pay back every cent. I stared at that spreadsheet for a long time, at the neat rows of numbers, the calculated interest, the professional formatting. Part of me wanted to believe this was different, that something had finally clicked for Cassidy, that she'd grown up, that this was the moment she'd been building toward all along. But another part of me, the part that had watched her quit and drift and rationalize for 3 years, whispered warnings I didn't want to hear. Can I think about it? I asked finally. Disappointment flickered across her face, but she nodded. Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Take all the time you need. She gathered up her papers carefully, sliding them back into the portfolio. As she stood to leave, she paused in the doorway. I know you don't have a lot of reasons to trust me, she said quietly, but I'm asking you to anyway. Please. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to the rain drum against the roof, that constant Portland percussion that usually lulls me to sleep, and thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Cassidy had never finished anything she started. She had expensive taste and no patience for the slow, grinding work of building something real. She was impulsive, emotional, quick to blame external circumstances when things got hard. But she was also my daughter, and Doug would have wanted me to believe in her. I got out of bed around 2 in the morning and went to my study, pulling out the folder where I kept our financial records. The life insurance money sat in a high-yield savings account, untouched except for the mortgage payoff. $47,238. 19. The number I checked compulsively, like somehow watching it would keep it safe. 40,000 would leave me with just over 7,000 in liquid savings. It wasn't nothing, but it wasn't comfortable either. If the furnace died, or the car needed major repairs, or I had a medical emergency, I'd be vulnerable in a way I hadn't been since Doug first got his diagnosis. But if I said no, what would that mean? That I didn't believe in my own daughter? That I'd rather protect money than invest in her future? What kind of mother would that make me? I thought about the lease agreement, the business plan, the testimonials. I thought about how hard it must have been for Cassidy to ask, to walk into my study knowing she'd disappointed me so many times before. By the time the sun came up, I'd made my decision. On Wednesday morning, I went to the bank and withdrew $40,000 in the form of a cashier's check. The teller, a young woman named Bethany, who'd helped me when I first opened my accounts after Doug died, gave me a concerned look. That's a significant withdrawal, Mrs. Ashford. Is everything all right? It's for my daughter, I said, and felt a strange mix of pride and terror saying it. She's starting a business. Bethany's expression softened. That's wonderful. Good for her. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to walk out of that bank feeling generous and supportive, like I was doing the right thing. Instead, I felt like I was carrying a live grenade in my purse. When I got home, Cassidy's car, a beat-up Honda Civic with a cracked taillight, was already in the driveway. She must have seen me pull up because she met me at the door, practically vibrating with nervous energy. Did you think about it? She asked before I'd even gotten my coat off. I reached into my purse and pulled out the check. Her eyes went wide. Mom, there are conditions, I said, and my voice came out firmer than I'd intended. You pay me back exactly as outlined in that spreadsheet. You send me monthly financial reports. I'm an accountant, Cassidy. I can help you stay on track. And if this doesn't work, if you blow through this money or quit or decide it's too hard, we're done. I can't do this again. She nodded rapidly, tears already streaming down her face. I understand. I promise. I swear, Mom, I'm not going to let you down. She hugged me then, so tight I could barely breathe, and I felt her shoulders shaking with sobs. I held her and thought about all the times I'd held her like this, when she was 7 and fell off her bike, when she was 13 and her best friend moved away, when she was 19 and Doug died and we both fell apart for a while. I believe in you, I whispered into her hair, and in that moment, I almost did. The first week after I gave Cassidy the money was almost normal. She moved into the Pearl District office space on a Thursday, and I helped her carry boxes of supplies up 3 flights of narrow stairs, reams of printer paper, a mini fridge, a desk lamp shaped like an architect's drafting light. The space was exactly as she'd described, small but charming, with exposed brick walls and massive windows that overlooked NW Glissant Street. Standing there in the afternoon light, surrounded by the bones of what could become something real, I let myself feel optimistic. "This is perfect," Cassidy said, spinning in a slow circle with her arms out. "Can't you just see it, Mom? Desk there, client meeting area by the window, portfolio prints on the walls." I could see it. That was the problem. She took me to lunch at a little Vietnamese place around the corner, and we ate banh mi sandwiches while she showed me sketches for her logo. We talked about marketing strategies, about building a website, about reaching out to her network. She seemed focused, present, like maybe this time really was different. The second week, she got busy. Too busy to respond to my texts right away, too busy to come to Sunday dinner at my place like we'd done almost every week since Doug died. When I called on Tuesday to ask how things were going, she sounded distracted. "It's crazy, Mom. Good crazy. I've got a huge project due for this boutique hotel in Bend, and I'm learning this new design software, and I'll call you back, okay? I promise." She didn't call back. By Thursday, I started to worry. Not panic, not yet. Just that low-grade unease that settles in your stomach and refuses to leave. I drove to the Pearl District office after a client meeting, told myself I was just in the neighborhood, that I wanted to see how the space was coming together. The office was dark, empty. Through the window, I could see the desk and lamp we'd carried up together, but no computer, no supplies, no signs of recent activity. I tried the door. Locked. I called Cassidy, straight to voicemail. I texted, "Hey, honey, stop by the office," but it was empty. "Everything okay?" No response. Friday morning, I woke up to a text that had come in at 2:47 a.m. "All good. Just working from home for a bit. Don't worry so much. Love you." It should have reassured me. Instead, it made everything worse. Saturday, I drove to her apartment in Hawthorne, a studio above a vegan bakery that always smelled like cardamom and burnt sugar. I knocked. No answer. I called her landlord, Mrs. Chen, who lived in the unit next door. "Oh, Cassidy?" "Mrs. Chen said when she opened her door, wiping flour from her hands. "She moved out. Paid through the end of the month and left last weekend. Didn't say where she was going." The bottom dropped out of my stomach. She moved. Took everything. Said something about staying with friends while she got the business going. Mrs. Chen frowned. "Is something wrong?" "No," I lied. "No, she probably just forgot to mention it." I sat in my car outside that bakery for 20 minutes trying to make sense of it. She'd moved out of her apartment. The office sat empty. She wasn't answering calls. And she had $40,000 of my money. I called her 17 times that day. Every single call went straight to voicemail. By Sunday, I filed a missing person report. The officer who took my statement, a heavy-set man with a Portland PD pin on his uniform, looked thoroughly unimpressed. "Ma'am, your daughter is 26 years old. She's not missing. She's just not communicating with you. Did you have an argument?" "No, but..." "Did she express any intention to harm herself?" "No, but she has $40,000 of my money and..." His expression shifted then, from bored to knowing. "Ah, so this is a civil matter." "What?" "No, I gave her that money for her business. She didn't steal it." "Then I'm not sure what you want us to do, Mrs. Ashford. She's an adult. She can choose not to contact you. If you believe she's misused funds, you'll need to pursue that through civil court." I left that police station feeling smaller than I'd felt in years. Foolish. Naive. Like everyone could see the word sucker stamped across my forehead. The call from Doug's sister came on Monday evening. "Margaret, I'm sorry to bother you," Claire said, her voice tight with that particular blend of concern and judgment she'd perfected over the years. "But I saw Cassidy this weekend. In Seattle." My heart seized. "Seattle? Are you sure?" "Positive. She was at that rooftop bar in Capitol Hill, you know, the one with the Space Needle view. I was there for a friend's birthday. She was with a group of people, laughing, drinking cocktails that probably cost $20 each." Claire paused. She didn't see me. But Margaret, she was wearing designer clothes, Gucci sunglasses. She looked like she was on vacation. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. "I'm sorry," Claire continued. "I know you've been worried. I thought you should know." After I hung up, I sat on my couch in the growing dark and felt something inside me begin to calcify. Not just hurt. That would come later. This was something colder. The slow realization that I'd been played. That the tears, the business plan, the promises, all of it had been performance. I checked Cassidy's Instagram for the first time in months. Her account was public, and there, right there, were the photos Claire had described. Cassidy at a rooftop bar, golden hour light making her hair glow, a cocktail in her hand. Cassidy in what looked like a boutique clothing store, holding up a leather jacket. Cassidy standing in front of the Space Needle, arms spread wide, caption reading, "New chapter, new city, new me." I scrolled back through her feed. In the past week, she'd been to 3 different restaurants I recognized from Seattle food blogs, a concert at the Crocodile, a beach on Bainbridge Island. Each photo showed her smiling, carefree, surrounded by people who looked like they'd never worried about money a day in their lives. I put my phone down very carefully, walked to the bathroom, and threw up. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. I kept working because I didn't know what else to do. I met with clients, reconciled accounts, filed quarterly reports. I went through the motions while something inside me screamed. At night, I lay awake, calculating exactly how much I had left, how long it would take to rebuild my savings, what I'd do if the car died or the roof started leaking or any of the 1,000 small disasters that require money to fix. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, not Claire, despite her concern. Not my sister in Boise, who'd warned me not to give Cassidy the money in the first place. Not Linda next door, who'd already given me too many pitying looks over the years. My shame felt too enormous to share. I stopped checking Cassidy's Instagram, stopped calling, stopped waiting for an explanation that clearly wasn't coming. And then came that Saturday morning in late October. I was in the front garden pulling weeds, one of those perfect fall days where the air smells like wood smoke and wet leaves, where the light comes in at that sharp angle that makes everything look like a painting. I'd been at it for maybe an hour, my knees damp from the grass, dirt under my fingernails, finding something almost meditative in the simple act of removal. That's when I heard it. The horn. Sharp, aggressive, deliberate. I looked up, and there it was. A BMW convertible. Brand new from the shine of it. Painted that specific shade of red that demands attention. The top was down despite the chill in the air. And behind the wheel, hair whipping in the wind, oversized sunglasses covering half her face, was Cassidy. She was smiling. Actually smiling like this was funny. Like my grief and worry and sleepless nights were a punchline she'd finally gotten to deliver. Our eyes met for maybe 2 seconds. Then she leaned out. I'll never forget this. Never. And shouted loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. "Thanks for the gift, old lady." She laughed. A bright, cruel sound that carried across the yards and through the open windows of the houses around us. Then she hit the gas, and the BMW roared down Oak Street, taking the corner fast enough that the tires squealed. I stood there holding my trowel, frozen, while the sound of that engine faded into the distance. Linda's curtains twitched. Across the street, the Hendersons had stopped unloading groceries from their car to stare. Old Mr. Patterson from 2 doors down was standing on his porch, mouth slightly open. They'd all heard her. They'd all heard my daughter call me an old lady, mock me for my generosity, and speed away in a car that cost more than most people make in a year. I dropped the trowel and walked inside, closed the door, locked it. And then I stood in my empty living room, the one Doug and I had painted together 15 years ago, where we'd hosted Christmas dinners and birthday parties and all the ordinary celebrations that make up a life. And I felt something break. Not my heart. That had broken when Doug died, and I'd learned to function without it. This was something deeper. The part of me that believed people could change. The part that trusted love to be enough. The part that thought being a good mother meant anything at all. The weeks that followed the BMW incident exist in my memory as a gray blur punctuated by moments of sharp, humiliating clarity. I learned that shame has a physical weight. It sat on my chest every morning when I woke up, made it hard to breathe, made the simple act of getting out of bed feel like scaling a mountain. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling fan, the one Doug installed himself, slightly off-center because he'd eyeballed the measurements, and think about that laugh. That bright, performative cruelty in Cassidy's voice when she'd called me an old lady. The worst part? She wasn't wrong. I was old. 52 felt ancient when your daughter could throw away $40,000 on a joyride and still look like she belonged in a magazine spread. Linda knocked on my door 3 days after it happened. I watched her through the peephole, saw her holding one of those aluminum-covered casserole dishes she brought over whenever she sensed crisis, and I didn't answer. I stood there, barely breathing, until I heard her footsteps retreat down the porch steps. She left the casserole by the door. I brought it in after dark and never ate it. Work became my sanctuary and my prison. I threw myself into client accounts with obsessive focus, staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning, reconciling spreadsheets that didn't need reconciling, color-coding files that were already perfectly organized. Numbers made sense. Numbers had rules. Numbers didn't betray you and speed away in convertibles. But even work couldn't protect me from the whispers. I'd go to the grocery store and catch fragments of conversations that died the moment I got close enough to hear. I'd see mothers with their adult daughters shopping together, laughing over produce selections, and have to abandon my cart and leave. Once, I ran into Mrs. Chen from Cassidy's old apartment building in the pharmacy, and the pity in her eyes was so visceral I mumbled an excuse and fled to my car, where I sat gripping the steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking. The isolation was suffocating. I'd lost Doug to cancer 6 years ago, and in that grief, I'd at least had Cassidy. We'd held each other up, or so I thought. We'd been a team of two against the crushing loneliness of loss. But now I understood that I'd been alone this whole time, clutching at the illusion of connection while my daughter waited for the right moment to cash me out. My sister Rachel called from Boise on a Thursday evening. I almost didn't answer, but years of conditioning made me pick up on the fourth ring. "Margaret, I'm worried about you," she said without preamble. Claire told me what happened, with Cassidy and the money. Of course she did. The family gossip network was faster than fiber optic internet. "I'm fine," I said, my voice flat. "You're not fine. $40,000, Marg. Jesus. I told you not to give her that money. I told you she wasn't ready. I don't need I told you so right now, Rachel. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to face reality. Cassidy is not the person you want her to be. She's selfish and immature, and she's been taking advantage of you for years. This is just the first time she's done it with this much money." I closed my eyes. Rachel wasn't wrong. But hearing someone say it out loud, hearing my own daughter reduced to those cold, accurate words, felt like being flayed. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Disown her? Write her off? I want you to stop setting yourself on fire to keep her warm. You've been doing it since she was 16 and it hasn't helped her. It's just taught her that mom will always bail her out." After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table where Cassidy had spread out her fake business plan. The wood still had a small coffee ring from that day. I traced it with my finger and wondered how I'd become this person, this foolish, gullible woman who'd mistaken manipulation for love. November arrived with the kind of rain that feels personal. Not the gentle Portland drizzle that locals shrug off, but angry sheets of water that hammered the windows and turned the streets into rivers. The house felt colder despite the heat running constantly. I started wearing Doug's old cardigan around the house, the one that still smelled faintly of him if I buried my face in the collar. I'd stopped checking Cassidy's Instagram, but late one night, weak with wine and loneliness, I broke my own rule. Her account was still public, still active, but the tone had shifted. The Seattle photos had stopped about 3 weeks ago. The last few posts were different. A sunset from what looked like a parking lot, captioned with a vague quote about growth through challenges. A photo of a coffee cup on a generic table. A selfie where she looked tired, hair unstyled, makeup minimal, with the caption, "Some days are harder than others." The comments had changed too. Earlier posts had dozens of responses, heart emojis, enthusiastic affirmations. These newer ones had maybe 3 or 4, all generic. "Stay strong. You got this." The fair-weather friends had already moved on to someone more entertaining. I felt a flicker of something that might have been satisfaction, followed immediately by a wave of guilt. What kind of mother takes pleasure in her daughter's struggles? The kind who got called an old lady, apparently. I closed the app and tried to sleep, but my mind kept turning over the same questions. Where was she staying? Was she safe? Was she eating properly? Did she ever think about what she'd done? Or did she rationalize it away like she rationalized every other failure? Did she miss me at all? My accountant's brain kept running the numbers whether I wanted it to or not. With the $40,000 gone, my savings sat at $7,138. 19. I'd been putting away $800 a month from my freelance work, so at that rate it would take me 4 years and 2 months to rebuild what I'd lost. Unless something went wrong. Unless the furnace died or the car needed major work, or I got sick, or any of the 1,000 small catastrophes that required money to fix. I ran scenarios in my head at night like some people count sheep. If I cut my grocery budget by 30% and stopped my streaming subscriptions, I could save an extra $100 a month. 4 years exactly. If I took on 2 more clients, which would mean working 60-hour weeks, maybe I could shave 6 months off that timeline. The numbers were brutal and unforgiving, but they were also solid. Real. Unlike trust or love or family, math wouldn't betray me. I started saying no to things I never thought I'd have to refuse. When the church fundraiser committee asked for my usual $100 donation, I wrote a check for $20 and felt the judgment in the coordinator's eyes. When Linda invited me to a women's lunch at that nice bistro on Milwaukee Avenue, I made up an excuse about a client deadline. I couldn't afford the $30 for a salad and glass of wine, and I certainly couldn't afford the questions. Pride is expensive. I was learning that the hard way. The BMW appeared in my dreams sometimes, always the same. That candy apple red, the top down, Cassidy's hair whipping in wind that seemed to blow from some malicious source. Sometimes I'd be standing in my garden again, frozen with my trowel. Sometimes I'd be chasing the car down Oak Street in my bare feet, screaming for her to stop, watching the distance between us grow. Once, I dreamed I was in the passenger seat, and when I turned to look at her, Cassidy's face was Doug's, and he was crying. I woke from that one at 4 a.m., gasping, and couldn't get back to sleep. The thing about betrayal is that it rewrites history. Every memory became suspect. Had Cassidy ever really loved me? Or had I always been just a resource to exploit? When she'd hugged me after Doug's funeral, sobbing into my shoulder, had that been real grief or just fear of losing her safety net? When she'd made me that handmade birthday card last year with the watercolor flowers, had it been genuine or calculated? I couldn't trust anything anymore, not even my own memories. 6 weeks after the BMW incident, my car started making a grinding noise when I braked. I took it to the mechanic, Jerry's Auto on Powell, where Doug used to take both our cars, and Jerry delivered the news with the apologetic tone of someone who knows you can't afford what he's about to say. Rotors are shot, Mrs. Ashford. Pads too. And while we're in there, I'd really recommend replacing the brake fluid and checking the calipers. The whole system's pretty worn. How much? With labor, around $1,200. I felt something crack in my chest. $1,200, 15% of everything I had left. But I needed the car. Needed it for client meetings, for grocery shopping, for the basic logistics of staying alive. Can you do just the minimum? I asked. Just whatever keeps it safe. Jerry's expression shifted into something that looked like pity. We can do the rotors and pads for about $800. But Mrs. Ashford, the rest of this is going to need attention soon. 6 months, maybe less. I authorized the $800 and took an Uber home, watching the charge appear on my banking app with a sick feeling in my stomach. $6,138. 19 left. 4 years and 7 months to rebuild. That night, sitting alone in my kitchen with a calculator and a glass of wine, I did something I'd been avoiding for weeks. I looked up the value of a nearly new BMW convertible. The base model started at around $70,000. If Cassidy had bought it new, and given the shine on that paint, she probably had, she'd likely blown through more than my $40,000. She'd probably drained her own savings too, maxed out credit cards, burned through everything. The thought should have given me satisfaction. Instead, it made me feel hollow. My daughter was out there somewhere, probably drowning, and I couldn't even summon the energy to care. What did that make me? Halloween came and went. I turned off my porch light and pretended not to be home while children rang the doorbell. Thanksgiving loomed on the horizon like a threat. Rachel invited me to Boise, but the thought of sitting around her table with her functional family, answering questions about Cassidy with lies or humiliating truths, made me want to disappear. I bought a small turkey breast and told myself I'd cook it. When the day came, I couldn't bring myself to turn on the oven. I ate crackers and cheese in front of the TV, watching other people's families on sitcom reruns, and went to bed at 7:30. The loneliness was a physical thing now. It had texture and weight, filled the rooms of my house like smoke. I'd go days without speaking to anyone except brief exchanges with cashiers. My voice started to sound strange to my own ears when I used it. I thought about getting a cat, went so far as to look up the local shelter's website, scrolled through photos of adult cats who needed homes. But I couldn't pull the trigger. What if something happened to me? What if I couldn't afford the vet bills? What if I adopted this living thing and then failed it the way I'd failed at everything else? The first week of November brought a cold snap that turned the rain to sleet. My heating bill was going to be brutal. I started keeping the thermostat at 62 during the day, wearing layers, making Doug's cardigan and a heated blanket my constant companions. That's when the email arrived. It came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and at first I thought it was spam. The subject line read, "Mom, please read this." My hand shook as I clicked it open. "Mom, I know you probably hate me. I know I don't deserve for you to even read this. But I need you to know I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did. I was stupid and selfish, and I hurt you in a way I can never take back. Things aren't going well. I made a lot of mistakes. Really big ones. I'm not asking for money or help or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that I think about what I did every single day. I think about your face when I drove by. I think about how hard you worked for that money and how I just threw it away trying to be someone I'm not. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I can. But you deserve to hear that I'm sorry. I love you. I know that doesn't mean much right now, but it's true. See, I read it 7 times, looking for the angle, the manipulation, the ask hidden in the apology. But there was nothing. Just those words, sitting in my inbox like an unexploded bomb. I didn't reply. Couldn't. What was there to say? I forgive you would be a lie. Go to hell would be true but pointless. So I left it unanswered and tried to pretend it didn't change anything. But it did. God help me, it did. Because now I knew she was conscious of what she'd done. Now I knew the guilt was there, eating at her. And some terrible part of me, the part that was still a mother despite everything, wanted to respond, wanted to ease that burden even though she deserved to carry it. I shut my laptop and went to bed. But I didn't sleep, just lay there in the dark, thinking about the girl who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms, who'd made me friendship bracelets out of embroidery floss, who'd sobbed when we had to put down our old dog Benny when she was 12. Was that person still in there somewhere? Or had I just imagined her all along? 2 days after the email, the second one arrived. This one was different. Desperate. Mom, I'm in trouble. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know that. But I'm scared and I don't know what else to do. The car got repossessed last week. I'm about to be evicted from where I'm staying. I have bills I can't pay and nowhere to go. I've been trying to figure it out on my own, but I can't. Everything is falling apart. I'm not asking for money, I just need advice. Please. I know you're good with this stuff. I know you understand how to fix financial messes. Just talk to me. Please. I'm so scared, Mom. There it was. The ask. Dressed up as a request for advice. But we both knew where it would lead. First advice, then help, then money, then more money. The same cycle we'd danced through her entire adult life, just with higher stakes this time. I typed and deleted 4 different responses before finally sending, I need time to think. Her reply came back in under a minute. Okay, thank you, I understand. But she didn't understand. How could she? She didn't know what it felt like to watch your entire safety net evaporate because you loved someone more than you loved your own security. She didn't know what it felt like to become a cautionary tale in your own neighborhood. Still, something had shifted. The wall I'd built around myself had developed a crack, and I could feel cold air seeping through. The knock came on November 18th at 9:47 p.m. I'd been working late, trying to finish a quarterly report for a client in Beaverton. Outside, the storm that had been threatening all day had finally broken open, turning the street into a waterfall. Rain hammered the roof so hard I almost didn't hear it. 3 soft taps that could have been a branch hitting the door. Then it came again. Louder. More insistent. My first thought was that it was Linda with another casserole. My second thought was that it was too late for Linda, who went to bed at 9 like clockwork. My third thought, the one that made my stomach drop, was that something terrible had happened and a police officer was at my door. I made my way to the entryway, checked the peephole, and there, distorted by the fisheye lens, was Cassidy. She looked like she'd been hollowed out. Her hair hung in wet ropes around her face, darker than its usual auburn from the rain. She wore an oversized hoodie that was soaked through, clinging to a frame that looked like it had lost 20 pounds. Her face was makeup-free, eyes ringed with the kind of exhaustion that comes from weeks of poor sleep, and she was shaking, whether from cold or fear or something else, I couldn't tell. In her arms, she clutched a canvas tote bag that looked ready to split open. Every instinct screamed at me to open the door. But another part, the part that had been nursing its wounds for 2 months, wanted to leave her standing there. Wanted her to feel a fraction of the cold I'd been living in since she drove away laughing. She knocked again, and I saw her face crumple. "Mom," she said, voice muffled by the door but still audible over the storm. "Please, I know you're there. Please." I unlocked the door. The moment I opened it, she stumbled inside, bringing with her the smell of rain and something else. Something desperate and defeated. Water pooled on my hardwood floor from her clothes. The tote bag fell from her grip, spilling its contents. A crumpled pile of papers, all of them printed in red ink with words like past due and final notice and disconnection warning. We stood there staring at each other for what felt like an hour, but was probably 10 seconds. Her eyes were the eyes of someone who'd seen their life fall apart and couldn't find the pieces. My eyes were the eyes of someone who'd built walls brick by brick and didn't know if they were strong enough. "I need help," she whispered. I didn't invite her to sit. I just stood there in my entryway, dripping rainwater pooling around her feet, and waited. Cassidy bent down and started gathering the scattered papers with shaking hands. Bills. So many bills. I caught glimpses of amounts as she shuffled them together. $847 passed due to a credit card company. $200 owed to an apartment complex in Seattle. A hospital bill for $2,340. A repossession notice for a vehicle I already knew was gone. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said, still crouched on the floor. She wouldn't look at me. Everyone I was staying with, they're done. I don't blame them. I've been lying to people for months, crashing on couches, promising I'd pay them back. No one believes me anymore. "I wonder why," I said, and my voice came out colder than I'd intended. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Good. The BMW," I said. "Tell me about the BMW." She sat back on her heels, still holding the stack of bills. Her face was blotchy from crying, nose red, eyes swollen. "I leased it. Put down $15,000, signed for 5 years. I don't know what I thought. That if I looked successful, I'd become successful. That people would take me seriously if I drove the right car. 15,000. I repeated the number, tasting its bitterness. What about the business? There was no business. Her voice cracked. There was never going to be a business. I mean, I wanted there to be. I really did. But then I got to Seattle and I met these people. Influencers, entrepreneurs, people who seemed like they had everything figured out. And I just wanted to be one of them. I wanted to matter. "So you spent my money trying to buy friends?" "Yes." She said it so quietly I almost didn't hear it over the rain. "I spent it on drinks and dinners and clothes and that stupid car. I spent it trying to be someone I'm not. And when it ran out, everyone disappeared. Turns out people only like you when you're paying for things." She finally looked up at me, and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Not shame. She'd shown me shame plenty of times. This was different. This was the complete absence of excuses. "I called you an old lady," she said, "in front of your neighbors, after you gave me everything. I don't know how to come back from that, Mom. I don't know if I can." I walked past her into the kitchen, grabbed the kettle, filled it with shaking hands. I needed something to do with my body, or I was going to collapse. Behind me, I heard her stand up, heard her shoes squelch on the hardwood. "Why did you come here?" I asked, my back still to her. "Really?" "Because I'm scared." Her voice was small, childlike. "Because I don't know how to fix this. Because you're the only person who's ever actually loved me, and I destroyed that, and I don't know what to do." I turned around. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, looking so much like the little girl who used to help me bake cookies on Saturday mornings that something inside me wanted to break. But I held firm. "You destroyed more than love, Cassidy. You destroyed my security. You destroyed my ability to trust. You destroyed my standing in this neighborhood, my relationship with my family, my peace of mind." I heard my voice rising and didn't try to stop it. "I gave you $40,000. Do you know what that means? That was my safety net. That was my cushion against disaster. And you threw it away on a costume party. I know. No, you don't know. You can't know. Because you've never had to be responsible for your own survival. You've never had to lie awake at night calculating whether you can afford to fix your car, or if you should just pray it doesn't break down. You've never had to say no to things you want because you're terrified of being one emergency away from destitution." The kettle screamed. I turned it off but didn't make tea. Just stood there gripping the counter. "I can't do this again," I said finally. "I can't be the person who saves you while you learn nothing from it. I can't keep sacrificing my well-being so you can avoid the consequences of your choices. I'm not asking you to." She set the bills down on my kitchen table, the same table where she'd spread out her fake business plan 2 months ago. "I'm asking for something different." "What?" "I'm asking you to let me stay here while I fix this myself. I'll get a job, any job. I'll pay rent. I'll pay you back. I'll go to financial counseling or therapy or whatever I need to do. But I need a place to start from, Mom. A floor that won't collapse. And I know I don't deserve it. I know that. But I'm asking anyway because I have nowhere else left to fall." I stared at her for a long time. at this woman who was my daughter, but also somehow a stranger. This person who'd caused me more pain than anyone except maybe death itself, standing in my kitchen soaking wet and asking for another chance she absolutely had not earned. Every logical bone in my body screamed no. Rachel would tell me to say no. The financial advisor I'd consulted after Doug died would tell me to say no. The part of me that had been nursing these wounds for 2 months wanted to say no with such force that it would shake the windows. But there was another part. Smaller. Quieter. The part that remembered holding this person as a newborn, watching her take her first steps, teaching her to read. The part that had promised, on the day she was born, to love her no matter what. That part was an idiot. But it was also the part that made me human. Okay, I said, and watched her eyes go wide with shock. But not like before. Not with me rescuing you and hoping you change. With conditions. Anything. Don't say anything yet. You haven't heard them. We sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours while I laid out the terms. I made tea neither of us drank. The rain continued its assault on the house, and somewhere around midnight it turned to hail, pinging off the windows like bullets. First, I said, you pay rent. $300 a month. Non-negotiable. I know that's below market rate, but this isn't about making money off you. It's about you understanding that living here has a cost. She nodded, taking notes on the back of one of her bills. Second, you get a job within 2 weeks. I don't care what it is, retail, food service, whatever. Full-time with a paycheck. Not freelancing, not gig work, not another business idea. A real job with a schedule and a boss and direct deposit. Okay. Third, you make a budget with me. Every dollar that comes in, every dollar that goes out, we account for it together. I'm an accountant, Cassidy. I know how to dig out of debt. But you have to be completely transparent. No hidden spending, no secret credit cards, no lies. I can do that. Fourth, you see a therapist. Not because I think you're crazy, but because clearly there's something driving this pattern of behavior. You're 26 years old and you just torched your entire life trying to impress people who don't matter. That's not normal. That's not healthy. So you find someone to talk to about why you keep doing this. She was crying again, but she kept writing. Fifth, you pay back what you owe me. Not all at once. I'm not stupid enough to think you can, but $50 a month until it's done. It'll take you 66 years at that rate, but I don't care about the timeline. I care that you acknowledge the debt and chip away at it. Okay, I'll do all of it. I'm not done. I waited until she looked up at me. Sixth, and this is the most important one. You don't get to walk away from this when it gets hard. You don't get to decide you're tired of therapy or budgeting or working retail is beneath you. You commit to this process for a minimum of 1 year. 1 full year of proving you can stick with something uncomfortable. And if you quit, if you bail, if you so much as miss a single month of rent without a damn good reason, you're out. I will pack your things and put them on the curb and change the locks, and I will not feel guilty about it. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Say it back to me. All of it. She did. Recited every condition in her own words, her voice getting steadier as she went. When she finished, she looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes in years. Genuine determination mixed with absolute terror. I'm going to mess this up, she said quietly. Probably more than once. I'm going to have bad days and want to give up and fall back into old patterns. I want you to know that I know that. Then what makes you think you can do this? Because for the first time in my life, I'm more scared of who I'll become if I don't than I am of how hard it's going to be if I do. The first week was brutal. Cassidy moved into her old bedroom on that rain-soaked Saturday night, sleeping in the same twin bed she'd had since high school. I gave her towels, a set of spare sheets, and a list of job listings I'd printed from Indeed. Then I went to my room and locked the door, because even though I'd agreed to this arrangement, I needed space from her presence. I heard her crying through the wall around 2 a.m. I didn't go to her. Couldn't. Every maternal instinct told me to comfort her, but I knew that comfort without consequences was what had created this mess. So I lay in bed and listened to my daughter sob herself to sleep, and I felt like the worst mother in the world. Maybe I was. Sunday morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and found Cassidy in the kitchen, dressed in clothes she'd presumably rescued from storage somewhere. She'd made breakfast, eggs, toast, the kind of simple food I'd taught her to cook when she was 10. I thought maybe we could go through those job listings together, she said, if you have time. We spent 3 hours at the kitchen table, filling out online applications. retail positions at the mall, barista jobs at coffee chains, administrative assistant roles that required skills she didn't have. She didn't complain once, just filled in fields, uploaded her sparse resume, and moved to the next listing. By Tuesday, she had 3 interviews scheduled. By Friday, she had a job. It was at a Target in Clackamas, part-time to start, $50 an hour, stocking shelves and running register during night shifts, not glamorous, not even full-time. But it was employment with a schedule and a paycheck, and when she came home from orientation with her red polo shirt and name tag, she looked simultaneously proud and devastated. "My first real job in 8 months," she said, staring at the name tag. "And it's retail." "It's honest work," I replied. "That's more than you've had lately." She flinched but nodded. The therapy search took longer. I'd given her the names of 3 counselors who specialized in behavioral issues and worked on sliding scale fees. She called all of them, got waitlisted at 2, and landed an intake appointment with the 3rd for the following week. Dr. Sarah Chen practiced out of a small office in Selwood, close enough that Cassidy could walk there if needed. After her first session, she came home looking wrung out. "How was it?" I asked. "Hard." She dropped her bag by the door. She asked me why I needed everyone to like me. I didn't have a good answer. "That's what therapy is for." "Yeah." She stood there for a moment looking lost. She asked about Dad, about how I handled his death. I told her I was fine, and she just stared at me until I admitted I wasn't. I felt something twist in my chest. We'd never really talked about Doug's death, Cassidy and I. We'd been too busy drowning separately to reach for each other. "Are you going back?" I asked. "Every week." "That was one of your conditions." I meant, "Do you want to go back?" She considered this. "I don't know yet. Ask me after session 3. Creating the budget was like performing surgery without anesthesia. We sat down with all her bills spread across the table, and I made her walk me through every single one. How she'd accumulated $8,000 in credit card debt, what the hospital bill was from, panic attack that sent her to the ER during week 7 of her Seattle adventure, why she owed her former roommate $600, borrowed for emergency expenses that turned out to be concert tickets. The total came to $23,947, not including the $40,000 she owed me. "Jesus," she whispered, staring at the number I'd written at the bottom of the page. "This is what rock bottom looks like in numbers," I said. "The good news is, you can climb out. The bad news is, it's going to take years." I showed her how to set up a debt snowball, how to prioritize high-interest credit cards, how to negotiate payment plans, how to distinguish between necessary expenses and things she wanted but didn't need. She listened with the focus of someone who'd finally realized there were no shortcuts. Her first Target paycheck was $487, $32 after taxes. We allocated every dollar, $300 to me for rent, $50 toward her smallest credit card balance, $50 into a savings account we opened that day, emergency fund starting from $0, $87, $32 for her phone bill and basic necessities that left her with exactly $0 for anything else. "This is impossible," she said, staring at the spreadsheet. "How am I supposed to live on nothing?" "The same way millions of people do. You pack lunches, you don't go out, you wear the same 5 outfits on rotation, you get creative." "For how long?" "Until it's not impossible anymore. Couple years probably." I watched her face cycle through emotions: anger, despair, resignation. She wanted to argue, wanted to find the loophole, wanted me to say it was okay to fudge the numbers, but something in her had shifted just enough that she didn't. "Okay," she said finally. "Couple years." The first month was a minefield of almost failures. Week 2, Cassidy came home from a therapy session visibly upset and went straight to her room. I heard her on the phone with someone. Couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. She was asking for money. After 20 minutes, she emerged and found me in the study. "I wasn't going to tell you this," she said, "but if I don't, it'll eat at me and I'll make it worse. I just called my friend Ava and asked if I could borrow $100. She said no." I set down my pen. "Why did you need $100? "I didn't need it. I wanted it. There's this jacket at Target that's on clearance, and I thought if I had it, I'd feel more like a person and less like a failure." Her voice cracked. "That's stupid, right? I'm so stupid." "Not stupid, human." I took a breath. "But here's what would have happened if Ava had said yes. You would have bought the jacket, felt good for maybe a day, then felt guilty. And you would have had one more debt and one more secret. That's the pattern, Cassidy. That's what we're trying to break." She nodded, wiping her eyes. I know. That's why I told you. Dr. Chen said I need to practice being honest about the impulses even when they make me look bad. How do you feel now? Like shit, but also kind of relieved? I don't know. This is really confusing. Week 3, she got her first full paycheck, $896, $47 for 2 weeks of work. We went through the budget allocation again, and I watched her physically struggle with handing me $300 for rent. This feels wrong, she said. Paying you. You're my mother. Would it feel less wrong if I were a landlord you'd never met? No, but then the feeling is about something else. Probably shame. You're allowed to feel it, but you still have to pay the rent. She counted out 15 20s from the cash she'd withdrawn specifically for this purpose and slid them across the table. Her hand shook slightly. I'm proud of you, I said, and meant it. She looked up, startled. For what? For doing the hard thing even though it hurts. Month 2 brought unexpected progress. Cassidy got bumped up to full-time at Target after consistently showing up on time and volunteering for extra shifts. Her paychecks increased to around $100 or $800 a month. We adjusted the budget, more toward debt repayment, more into savings, but still maintaining the discipline of allocation. She started bringing home clearance groceries from Target, using her employee discount to stretch our food budget. I found myself actually cooking with her again, teaching her the cheap filling meals I'd learned during my own broke years. Lentil soup, pasta with whatever vegetables were on sale, rice and beans 1,000 different ways. One night, while we were making chili, she said, I forgot how much I missed this, cooking with you. I didn't forget, I replied. I just tried not to think about it. She was quiet for a moment, stirring the pot. I'm sorry I took that away from us, along with everything else. The thing about living with someone while they're trying to change is that you see every small victory and every tiny failure in real time. You can't romanticize the progress because you're in the trenches with them, watching them struggle. But you also can't deny it when it's real. Month 3, something shifted. It was subtle. Cassidy stopped asking for exceptions to the budget, stopped making excuses when therapy was hard, started talking about her coworkers at Target like they were actual friends, not just people she worked with. She picked up a weekend shift doing holiday displays and came home exhausted but oddly satisfied. It's weird, she said one night, eating leftover chili at the kitchen table. I make minimum wage and I'm in debt up to my eyeballs, but I feel more stable than I did when I was pretending to be rich in Seattle. That's because this is real, I said. Uncomfortable and unglamorous, but real. I think I've been running from real my whole life. Most people do, to some degree. You just ran farther and faster than most. She smiled a little. That sounds like something Dr. Chen would say. Maybe therapy is working. Maybe. We'd been having more conversations like this. Not deep, not resolving anything, just existing in the same space without the constant tension of betrayal and resentment. I wouldn't call it forgiveness. I still locked my bedroom door at night. I still checked my bank account compulsively. I still had moments where I'd see her and remember the BMW and feel rage flash through my body like lightning. But there were other moments too. Moments where she'd do the dishes without being asked, or bring me coffee while I was working, or tell me about a difficult customer at Target and how she'd handled it professionally instead of quitting on the spot. Small things. But from rubble, you rebuild with small things. The crisis came in month 4, right before Christmas. Cassidy came home from work on a Tuesday evening, and I knew immediately something was wrong. She had that look, the wild-eyed, breathing too fast look of someone on the edge of a panic attack. What happened? I asked, setting down the client file I'd been reviewing. I got invited to a party. She said it like she'd been diagnosed with a terminal illness. This girl from work, Madison. She's having a Christmas party at her apartment this weekend. Nice place in the Pearl District. She said people are bringing wine and wearing cocktail dresses, and it's going to be elegant. I waited. There was more. I don't have a cocktail dress. I don't have wine to bring. I don't have... She pressed her hands to her face. I can't go looking like this, like someone who shops at Goodwill and can't afford decent shoes. They'll know. They'll all know I'm broke and pathetic and... Stop. I stood up. Breathe. Just breathe for a second. She did, shakily. Okay, now tell me the truth. Do you want to go to this party? Or do you want to go to this party looking like someone you're not? She opened her mouth, closed it. Tears started streaming down her face. I don't know anymore, she whispered. I don't know which parts of me are real and which parts are just performance. I like Madison. I want to be her friend, but I'm terrified she'll see the real me and decide I'm not worth knowing. This was it. The moment where she either fell back into old patterns or pushed through into something new. Here's what I think, I said carefully. I think you should go to that party exactly as you are, wearing whatever you already own, bringing a bottle of wine that costs $12 from Trader Joe's. And if Madison and her friends decide that's not good enough, then they're not your people. But what if I'm not anyone's people? Then you find new people, better people who give a shit about who you are, not what you own. She stood there in my living room, this 26-year-old woman who looked about 16, and I saw her wrestling with something fundamental. The urge to perform versus the risk of being real. What if I go and I'm awkward and boring because I can't afford to drink much, and I leave early because I have work the next morning? She asked. What if I'm just me? Then you'll know who you are when you're not trying to be someone else. That's worth more than any cocktail dress. She thought about this for a long moment. Then she went to her room and I heard her on the phone. Hey Madison, it's Cassidy. Yeah, I'm definitely coming Saturday. Can I bring anything? Oh, perfect. I'll grab some wine. See you then. Saturday came. Cassidy spent 2 hours trying on different combinations of clothes she already owned. A black skirt I'd bought her 3 Christmases ago, a sweater she'd thrifted in month 2, boots she'd had since college. She came out looking nervous but put together in a normal, unstudied way. How do I look? She asked. Like yourself. That's the point. She left at 7, clutching a bottle of Trader Joe's Chardonnay, and I spent the next 3 hours pretending to work while actually just worrying. Not that she'd spend money she didn't have. We'd been over the budget that morning, and she had exactly $20 in her wallet for an Uber home if needed. I worried she'd come home crushed, that the experience would send her spiraling backward into self-loathing and bad decisions. She walked in at 10:30 and she was smiling. How was it? I asked immediately. It was. Good? Weird, but good. She kicked off her boots and collapsed on the couch. The apartment was beautiful. The people were nice. And I spent the whole first hour feeling like an imposter, like everyone could tell I was broke and didn't belong there. And then I talked to this guy named Ben who works in tech, and he asked what I do, and I told him the truth, that I work at Target, that I'm rebuilding my life after making some really bad financial decisions. And you know what he said? What? He said, that takes guts. Most people would just keep pretending. Then we talked for like an hour about failure and starting over, and he told me about how he'd declared bankruptcy at 30 and had to move back in with his parents. She laughed, but it wasn't bitter. Turns out half the people at that party have money problems. They're just better at hiding it than I am. Or you're better at being honest than they are. Maybe, I don't know. But I left when I said I would. I didn't spend money I didn't have. And Madison asked if I wanted to get coffee next week. Like actual friends coffee, not networking coffee. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness. I still wasn't there yet. But something close to hope. I'm proud of you, I said. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw her eyes get wet. I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying. I know you are. Christmas was quiet. We couldn't afford much. I'd made it clear that gift giving was off the table this year, and Cassidy didn't argue. Instead, we spent Christmas Eve making Doug's favorite cookies, watching old movies, existing together in a way that felt almost normal. On Christmas morning, I woke up to find a card on my bedside table, handmade like the ones Cassidy used to make as a kid. Inside, she'd written, Mom, I know I can't give you back what I took. Not the money, not the trust, not the time we lost. But I'm giving you this. I'm staying. I'm doing the work. I'm becoming someone who deserves your love instead of someone who just expects it. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when you should have. Love, C. P.S. I paid my January rent early. Check your desk. I went to my study and found $300 in an envelope, along with the receipt from her paycheck. She'd paid 2 weeks early without being asked. I sat at my desk and cried for the first time since she'd come back. 6 months after Cassidy moved back home, something remarkable happened. It stopped feeling temporary. Not that I'd grown complacent. I still maintained boundaries, still checked the budget allocations, still kept my bedroom door locked out of habit. But the constant vigilance, the waiting for her to fail or flee, had gradually faded into something that felt almost like routine. She was working full-time at Target now, plus picking up occasional freelance design work. Small projects she'd carefully vetted with me first, making sure they didn't interfere with her primary job or tempt her into unrealistic thinking. A logo for a friend's food truck. a menu redesign for a local coffee shop. Nothing glamorous, but it brought in an extra $200 or $300 a month that went straight into debt repayment. Her credit card balances had dropped to $6,200. She'd paid off the hospital bill completely. She'd been in therapy every single week without missing an appointment, even when it was hard, even when Dr. Chen pushed her into uncomfortable territory about her relationship with her father's death and her patterns of seeking external validation. But more than the numbers, something had changed in how she carried herself. She moved through the world with less performance, less desperation to be seen as anything other than what she was. She'd started wearing her Target name tag like it was armor instead of shame. One evening in late May, we were cleaning up after dinner when she said casually, "I've been thinking about something." "Okay." I dried the plate she'd handed me, waited. "I want to take some classes. Community college, nothing crazy, just basic business courses. Accounting, maybe. Marketing done right." She glanced at me nervously. "I know I dropped out before. I know I have a history of starting things and not finishing. But I've been thinking that if I'm going to eventually run a real business, years from now, when I'm actually ready, I should understand how businesses actually work. Not the fantasy version, the real version." I set down the dish towel. "How would you pay for it?" "Financial aid for most of it. And I've been saving beyond my debt payments. $50 a month for the past 4 months. I have $200 set aside." She said it with quiet pride, like she'd summited Everest instead of just managed to not spend extra money. "I'd start with one class, see if I can handle it with work and therapy. If I can't, I drop it. No shame, no drama, just honest assessment." This was new. Old Cassidy would have enrolled in 4 classes, gotten overwhelmed, and quit after 3 weeks. This version was thinking small, thinking sustainable, thinking long-term. "What class?" I asked. "Introduction to Accounting. Twice a week, evenings, 12 weeks. She smiled a little. "Figured I should learn from the best eventually, maybe understand what you do all day." I felt something warm expand in my chest. Not quite forgiveness, that word still felt too big, too final, but something adjacent. Respect, maybe, or recognition of real change. "I think that's a good idea," I said. Her face lit up. "Yeah? Yeah, but same rules apply. You don't get to quit when it's hard." "I know, I won't." The first day of her accounting class, Cassidy came home with a used textbook and an expression of confused panic. "Mom, I don't think I'm smart enough for this," she said, dropping the book on the kitchen table with a thud. Everyone in that class is younger than me, and they all seemed so confident. And the professor started talking about debits and credits, and I don't know if I can do this. I picked up the textbook, flipped through it. Basic stuff. Foundation. Exactly where everyone starts. "You know what the difference is between you and those confident 18-year-olds? I asked. "They're smarter? They haven't failed yet. They still think everything will be easy." I handed the book back to her. "You've already learned the hardest lesson, Cassidy. You know what it costs to fail. That makes you more prepared than all of them combined." That's a depressing way to have an advantage. Most real advantages are depressing when you earn them the hard way. She studied the textbook cover for a moment, then opened it to the first chapter. "Will you help me? I know you're busy, but if I get stuck." "Of course, that's what I'm here for." We spent that evening at the kitchen table, me walking her through the basic principles of double-entry bookkeeping. She took notes in a spiral notebook, asked questions, didn't give up when it didn't make immediate sense. Around 10 p.m., something clicked, and she sat back with an expression of genuine wonder. "Oh," she said. "Oh, that's actually kind of elegant. The way it all has to balance." "Everything good has to balance," I said. "Money, relationships, life. Is that why you're so good at this? You understand balance?" I thought about the past 6 months, about how I'd balanced loving my daughter with protecting myself, how I'd balanced giving her a chance with maintaining boundaries, how I'd balanced hope and skepticism in equal measure, every single day. "I understand that balance doesn't mean equal," I said finally. "It means sustainable. It means you can keep going without collapsing." She looked at me for a long moment. "You're talking about more than accounting, aren't you?" "I'm always talking about more than accounting." Month 7 brought an unexpected conversation. Linda from next door knocked on my door on a Saturday morning, holding a plate of muffins and wearing an expression that said she'd been working up courage for a while. "I owe you an apology," she said before I could even invite her in. "For what?" "For judging you." Back when everything happened with Cassidy. I saw you pulling back from everyone and I assumed you were ashamed. I thought you'd failed as a mother. She shifted the muffin plate awkwardly. But I saw Cassidy leaving for work yesterday morning. She was wearing her Target uniform and she looked, I don't know, purposeful. And I realized I'd gotten the whole story wrong. I took the muffins, gestured her inside. We sat in the living room where I'd spent so many lonely nights, and I told her the abbreviated version. The money, the betrayal, the return, the reconstruction. God, Linda breathed when I finished. That's incredible. That she came back. That you let her. That it's actually working. I don't know if it's working yet, I said carefully. It might still fall apart. She might still relapse into old patterns. This could all be temporary progress before a permanent setback. But you don't really believe that anymore, do you? I thought about Cassidy hunched over her accounting textbook at 11 p.m., determined to understand. About her handing me rent without being asked. About her staying at that Christmas party for exactly as long as she'd planned. No more, no less. About her calling me from Target last week just to tell me she'd gotten a customer compliment and wanted to share it with someone. No, I admitted, I don't. Linda smiled. You're a better mother than I gave you credit for, and she's becoming a better daughter than you probably dared to hope. After she left, I sat with those words for a while. Better mother, was I? Or had I just gotten lucky that my daughter's rock bottom happened to be shallow enough that she could push off and swim for the surface? Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe the point wasn't whether I'd done everything right, but whether I'd done enough right to give her a chance. Month 8, Cassidy passed her accounting class with a B+. She came home from her final exam looking dazed, holding the grade report like it was made of gold leaf. I did it, she said. I actually did it. 12 weeks and I didn't quit. Did you ever want to? I asked. Every single week, especially week 7 when we covered financial statements and I had a panic attack in the bathroom before class. But I kept showing up. Dr. Chen says that's the whole point. Doing the thing even when your brain is screaming at you to run. I took the grade report from her hands, studied it. Not just the final grade, but the individual assignment scores. Steady improvement. No dramatic peaks and valleys. Just consistent, unglamorous work paying off incrementally. Your father would be proud, I said, and watched her face crumble. She'd been doing so well that I'd almost forgotten grief was still there, waiting in the spaces between progress. She sat down hard on the couch, and I sat beside her, not touching, but present. I wish he could see this, she whispered. The real version of me trying, not the version that pretended everything was fine, and then fell apart the second things got hard. He sees it, I said, and I almost believed it. And more importantly, you see it. You know who you're becoming. Who am I becoming? Someone who shows up, someone who finishes things, someone who doesn't run when it's uncomfortable. I paused. Someone I'm starting to trust again. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Really? Slowly, carefully, but yes. The 9-month mark brought something I hadn't expected. Cassidy got promoted, not to management or anything dramatic, just to a specialized position in Target's visual merchandising department, working on displays and seasonal setups. It came with a $2 per hour raise and more consistent daytime hours. They said I have an eye for it, she told me, practically glowing. That the holiday displays I did were some of the best the stores had. They want me to work on back to school next. That's your design background coming through, I said. Yeah, but I'm actually using it now. In a real job. For a real paycheck. Not just promising I'll make something beautiful someday and then not delivering. She sat at the kitchen table where we still did our monthly budget reviews. I've been thinking about that business I always said I wanted. My stomach clenched. Here it was, the relapse. The return to unrealistic thinking. I don't want it anymore, she continued, and I felt my anxiety shift to confusion. Or I do, but not like before. I don't want to be some independent design guru with a fancy office and a BMW. I just want to be good at what I do. Good enough that people pay me fairly for work I'm proud of. That's it. That's the whole dream. That's not very flashy, I said carefully. No, but it's real. And I think I spent so long chasing flashy that I forgot real was an option. She pulled out her budget spreadsheet. She kept her own copy now, updated it weekly without me asking. I've paid off $17,000 in debt in 9 months. I have $800 in my emergency fund. I'm taking another class in the fall. Business communications. I'm building something. It's slow and boring and unglamorous, but it's mine, and nobody can take it away from me because it's not built on pretending. I looked at this woman who was my daughter, who'd driven past my house in a BMW laughing at my pain 9 months ago, who now sat at my table in a Target polo shirt, talking about slow progress like it was a religion, and I felt something shift in my chest. Forgiveness. Not the kind that forgets or excuses or erases. The kind that acknowledges the wound and chooses to stop picking at it. The kind that says, "You hurt me, and I'm healing, and we're both different now." "I'm proud of you," I said. "Not for becoming who I wanted you to be, for becoming who you actually are." She started crying, which made me start crying, and we sat there at the kitchen table crying together for the first time since Doug's funeral. But this was different. This was grief and relief and hope all tangled together, messy and complicated and real. Month 10 brought an unexpected guest. Claire, Doug's sister, the one who'd called to tell me about Cassidy in Seattle, showed up unannounced on a Sunday afternoon. I answered the door with paint on my hands from helping Cassidy touch up her bedroom walls, and Claire stood there with a bottle of wine and a hesitant expression. "I heard Cassidy is living here again," she said. "I wanted to check in, make sure you're okay." I almost said I was fine out of reflex, but something about the past 10 months had worn away my tolerance for comfortable lies. "It's been hard," I said, "but we're figuring it out. Come in." Cassidy was in the living room, working on homework for her business communications class. When she saw Claire, she went very still. "Aunt Claire." "Cassidy." Claire's voice was cautious. "How are you?" "Better than I was. Not as good as I want to be. Working on it." They stared at each other for a moment, and I saw the exact moment Claire decided to extend grace. Her expression softened, and she sat down on the couch. "Your mom told me what happened. All of it." She glanced at me, then back to Cassidy. "I'm not going to pretend I'm not disappointed in some of your choices, but I'm impressed by what you're doing now. That takes guts." "That's what people keep telling me," Cassidy said with a small smile. "I'm starting to think failing spectacularly is the only way to learn how to succeed boringly." "Boring success is underrated," Claire said. "Your father would tell you that. He spent 20 years as a claims adjuster. Not glamorous, but he was damn good at it. And he was proud of that work." Cassidy's eyes filled with tears. "I forgot that about him. I forgot that he was okay with being ordinary. He wasn't ordinary, he was steady. There's a difference." Claire looked at me. "And your mother is steady. That's not ordinary either." We spent the afternoon together, the three of us, and it felt like something being mended. Not fixed. Some things stay broken in ways that matter, but mended. Put back together with visible seams that told the truth about what had happened. Month 11, I did something I hadn't done in almost a year. I went through my finances and realized I could breathe again. Between Cassidy's rent payments, my own steady freelance income, and the absence of emotional spending I'd been doing during my lowest months, my savings had climbed back to $12,147. Not what it was before, not even close, but enough that I didn't lie awake at night calculating disaster scenarios. I'd also started sleeping without locking my bedroom door. I'm not sure when it happened, sometime around month 8 or 9, but one night I just forgot, and when I woke up the next morning and realized, I didn't panic. I just made coffee. Small things. But from small things, you build lives. Cassidy paid me back $50 every single month, like clockwork. We both knew it would take 66 years at that rate, knew she'd never actually pay back the full $40,000. But it wasn't really about the money anymore. It was about the ritual of acknowledgement. About saying every month, "I remember what I took from you, and I'm trying to make it right." The 1-year mark fell on a rainy November day, almost exactly like the night Cassidy had shown up at my door. We didn't plan anything special, but when she came home from her shift at Target, she found me in the kitchen making chili, the same chili we'd made together during month 2. "1 year," she said, setting down her bag. "1 year," I confirmed. She came to the stove, looked into the pot. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night? About the conditions?" "I remember all of it. You said if I quit or bailed or missed a single month of rent, I was out. That you'd change the locks and not feel guilty." She stirred the chili absently. "Did you mean it?" "Every word." "Would you do it now, if I messed up?" I thought about this carefully. The truth was complicated. "I don't know," I said finally. "A year ago, yes. Absolutely. Now? I think it would depend on the mess up. If you relapsed into lying or disappeared with money or stopped trying, yeah, I'd have to let you go. But if you made a mistake and owned it, if you struggled but kept showing up, I think we'd figure it out. That's growth, she said softly, for both of us. Or codependency. It's sometimes hard to tell the difference. She laughed, and it was the laugh I remembered from before everything fell apart. Genuine, unguarded. Doctor, Chen would say the difference is whether we're helping each other grow or just enabling each other to stay stuck. And which are we doing? Growing, I think, I hope. She turned to face me. I'm enrolling in 2 classes next semester, and I'm going to start doing freelance design work more seriously. Not instead of Target, but alongside it. Build up a real portfolio. Maybe in a few years, I'll have enough clients that I can think about it as a primary income. But if that doesn't happen, I'm okay. Because I like my life now. It's small and weird and nothing like what I thought I wanted, but it's mine. That's all any of us get, I said. A small, weird life we build one boring day at a time. When did you get so wise? Around the time my daughter bought a BMW with my retirement fund, and I had to decide whether to hate her forever or figure out how to let her earn her way back. She flinched, but she was smiling. Too soon? It'll always be too soon, but I can laugh about it now. Sort of. We ate chili at the kitchen table, and I realized something. This was enough. Not perfect, not fully healed, but enough. We were enough. I'm sitting in the crowd at Portland Community College's graduation ceremony, watching Cassidy walk across the stage to receive her associate's degree in business administration. She's wearing a borrowed cap and gown, and underneath it I know she's wearing her good black pants from Target and a blouse we found on clearance 6 months ago. Her hair is pulled back in a simple bun. No designer labels, no performance. Just her, receiving a degree she earned through 2 years of night classes while working full-time. The woman sitting next to me is Madison, her friend from that Christmas party 2 years ago. On my other side is Linda from next door. Behind us, Claire and her husband. A small crowd, but a real one. People who showed up because they genuinely care, not because they were impressed by appearance. When they call Cassidy's name, she crosses the stage with steady steps. No flourishes, no dramatic gestures. She accepts her diploma, shakes the dean's hand, and walks off the other side. But before she disappears into the line of graduates, she looks into the crowd, finds me, and mouths, "Thank you." I nod. That's all, just a nod. But it carries everything. The pain, the rebuilding, the slow transformation of 2 people who'd hurt each other learning how to exist in the same space without destruction. After the ceremony, we go to a modest dinner at the Vietnamese place near her old office space, the one where we'd eaten those banh mi sandwiches when I thought she was really starting a business. The irony isn't lost on either of us. I drove by the Pearl District space last week, Cassidy says over spring rolls. It's a yoga studio now. How did that feel? Weird, sad, but also kind of funny? Like that person who wanted that office, I barely recognize her. She felt so much and understood so little. Do you wish you could go back and tell her anything? Madison asks. Cassidy considers this. I'd tell her that the BMW won't make her matter. That the only thing that makes you matter is deciding to show up for your own life, even when it's unglamorous. Especially when it's unglamorous. Would she have listened? I ask. Probably not. Some lessons you can only learn by failing. She looks at me. I'm sorry you had to pay for my education. I'm sorry I had to wait so long for your graduation. We both smile. It's easier now, the forgiveness. Not complete. I don't think it ever will be. There's a scar where the wound was, and sometimes it aches when the weather changes. But scars are proof of healing, not proof of damage. After dinner, as we're walking to our cars, Cassidy pulls an envelope from her purse. I have something for you, she says. Inside is a check for $3,000. What is this? I ask. I've been doing freelance design work on the side for 18 months, really building it up. I just landed a big contract, rebranding for a small hotel chain. This is my first payment. She nods toward the check. It's not $40,000. It's not even close. But it's real money, from real work, and I want you to have it. Not as rent, not as repayment for the loan, as repayment for believing I could become someone worth believing in. I look at the check, at my daughter's name printed in the corner, at the number that represents months of unglamorous work. I'm proud of you, I say. And this time it comes without caveats or conditions, just pure, uncomplicated pride. I'm proud of me too, she says. I think Dad would be. I know he would be. We stand there in the parking lot of a Vietnamese restaurant in Portland, Oregon, holding a check that represents everything we've both learned about failure and rebuilding, and the brutal, unglamorous work of becoming people we can respect. It's not a perfect ending. Cassidy still has $14,000 in debt. She still lives in my house, still pays rent, still sees Dr. Chen every week. She still has moments where she wants to run, still struggles with the impulse to perform instead of exist. And I still have moments where I look at her and remember the BMW, remember that laugh, remember what it felt like to be called an old lady by the person I loved most in the world. But we're here. We showed up, we did the work, and tomorrow we'll wake up and do it again. Because that's what forgiveness looks like in real life. Not a single moment of absolution, but 1,000 small decisions to keep building instead of demolishing, to keep showing up instead of running, to keep believing that people can change, slowly, if they're willing to do the unglamorous work of becoming. The BMW is long gone, but we're still here. And that, somehow, is enough. I offered my daughter $40,000 to start her business. 2 weeks later, she disappeared and drove by honking in a BMW, saying, "Thanks for the gift, old lady." 2 months later, she was at my door begging for help with bills.